Jon, good afternoon. Thank you for taking time. I appreciate it.
Ron, my pleasure. Always love connecting with you and the great city of Pittsburgh. I'm hoping that my travels bring me back to that great city here, whether it's for hockey or baseball. And certainly a good pick for Brian Burke and Ron Hextall last night with Pickering. He skates really well for a 6'4" defenseman, so good night for the Penguins.
Okay, I was going to start baseball with you, but since you brought that up, and I know you do some NHL work as well, what did you think of the Letang extension, and what do you think about bringing back Evgeny Malkin?
Yeah, well, first of all, for Letang, I think both players, obviously, they should finish their careers with the Penguins. They should be one-team Hall of Fame players. I think both are headed there, and certainly Sid, obviously, as well. And for me, I think this core of players, maybe with a couple very specific moves over the course of the summer, I think is still within a window of cup contention. I think we saw some very impressive moments from them during the course of the season. And I think with both Malkin and Letang, I think they both have a lot of great hockey left in them. So I think the extension was at a fair price point that allows, I think, Brian Burke and Ron Hextall to still make some moves and augment the roster. And I think Pickering could make an impact on this team. Maybe not this year, but I certainly think the following year. So I think overall, for a team that hasn't had a lot of first-round picks because of all the times they've had to trade them away to sustain this run, I think that was a very good pick. And obviously, I think the Penguins' next pick's in the fourth round, so still some busy hours ahead for Ron Hextall and his staff.
John, the only problem I have if you bring Malkin back, these guys are getting older, and they've lost in the first round the last 4 years. Now, I guess you could argue, okay, goaltending. Jarry was horrible 2 years ago, and then he and both DeSmith got hurt last year. I just wonder, I watch Colorado, and I just don't see the Penguins matching up with them if you keep the same core together.
Well, first of all, nobody can really match up with Colorado. They're the standard right now, and so I think the question in the NHL is how do you either get there or find a different way to beat them? They're the best team in the NHL this year. They showed it in the regular season. I think they showed it, obviously, getting to the Cup final. And I would say this, that only one team in the world has Cale Makar, and only one team in the world has McKinnon and Landeskog and all the great scoring they had. I think that if you find, I would say this, to your point, the rest of the summer, if you are going to bring back Malkin, if you're going to bring back Letang, the rest of the summer I think has to revolve around finding players, whether it's in free agency or trades, that can give you a bit more of a speed element to your game. I think that the NHL game has gotten faster and faster. As we heard the update, I think what Logan Cooley's going to bring to Arizona, the great Western PA native, I think that he has that speed element, and I think that we're going to see more of that in the game here in the years to come. But just because you can't play at the pace of the Avalanche, to me, does not mean that you have to start a rebuild. I think there are still plenty of playoff rounds to be won with maybe a little bit more speed to counteract the incredible skill and experience they've got with Crosby and Letang and Malkin.
John, the other big decision that Hextall has to make this offseason is what to do with Tristan Jarry. Going into his contract year, obviously had the meltdown in the playoffs, not this season, the previous season, and then bounced back very strong, but got hurt late in the year. Do you commit big to him? Do you look at him as a premier goaltender?
Do I look at him as a premier goaltender? I don't think he's necessarily an elite goalie, no. But I do think at full health, he's good enough to win a couple playoff rounds. And I think, to your point, a couple of years ago was obviously a disastrous playoff round for the Penguins and for him. But I think overall, he really built up a very strong reputation during the course of this past year. And if there's not an injury, I think it's a very, very different playoff journey for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So for me, is he elite? I don't think we can say that yet. But I also think that there's enough in there that you could win a playoff round, maybe two, with Tristan Jarry in goal.
It's going to be an interesting summer still. I mean, we're a little bit surprised here that Letang took, 6.1 average. Everybody thought he might have got a raise after what he did last year. And then Brian Rust also did what looks to be a team-friendly deal. So maybe they will have some money to be able to bring back Malkin.
That's a great point, and that speaks to the culture of the organization. This is obviously a championship organization. And you've got people in Brian Burke and Ron Hextall who certainly know what it takes to win cups in the NHL from a management side. And for me, when you have players in a cap world, obviously unique to the NHL in comparison to baseball, when you have to do that to make those decisions, you're right. We're not talking about the possibility of realistically bringing back Malkin unless Rust comes in at the number where he is and Letang at the number where he is. So I think it just speaks to the strength of the culture with the Penguins. People like playing with 87. Okay, like that's, to me, that's still true. He's an iconic player in this sport, and when you have that presence, I think it just speaks to the culture that Sid has cultivated in that dressing room, and players clearly want to be a part of it.
You know, John, he doesn't look to be slowing down to me
Nope.
at all. He's got a birthday coming up, 8/7/87, so he's going to be 35 next month. Before I get into some Pirates and baseball talk with you, we all feel here that they're up 3-1 against the Rangers, and Trouba delivers the chicken wing to Sid's head. We kind of feel like the series turned. What did you think of that hit, and are you convinced the Penguins would have won the series if Sid hadn't gotten hurt?
I didn't like the hit, and for me, and obviously we talk about the NHL and how discipline is handled. It's probably a longer, more nuanced conversation than we have time for today. But I will say this: I think everybody in the hockey world knows how important Sid is, and that when that hit happened, I think we all held our breath. And I think to a certain extent, there is always going to be concern over him just because of the history, and I think that's why when you look back at the first hit in the Winter Classic. And what all has transpired for Sid since then, and the cups that he's won, and the journey that he's been on, it to me, if you had told us at the time when he was missing months and months, and there was such profound uncertainty, if you had a conversation back then and said that the next decade really was going to be as successful as it's been for Sid and the Penguins, that would have been an extraordinarily positive outcome. And so I think that any time that Sid is able to just show what is still left in the tank. And to your point, there's a lot of left in the tank. I think he's still able, to skate. I mean, his legs are still at an incredible pace, and obviously he does everything he does from a defensive perspective. There are still a lot of great years left in his career, and I didn't like the hit. I didn't. And I believe that it certainly is a very different series if Sid is able to stay in there and take every shift for the balance of that series.
Great hockey stuff, John. Appreciate it. We're talking to Jon Morosi here. We'll also want to talk baseball with him. He does great work for the MLB Network. John, you got a man of many hats. You're quite the utility player, except you're a star.
Well, I don't know about that. I appreciate the kind words. I'm just like you. I'm lucky to live in a great hockey area in Michigan, and to get a chance to get over to the rinks, whether it's college games or the NHL or the USA Hockey Development Program over in Plymouth. So it's a big part of my life, and these are the two sports I love. And so to be able to work at both networks is really a blessing for me and my family.
Well, you're in Michigan. Another great friend of this show, and a great friend of mine personally, is Doc Emrick. He's a Michigan man, too. Yeah. Do you run into Doc at all?
So every now and then, I certainly back when he was doing all the national games for NBC, I would see him at the airport from time to time, and certainly see him around at the rink during the Stanley Cup playoffs whenever I'd be able to jump over to the hockey side. And just what a magnificent person, and his graciousness, the way he's helped to grow the game in our country for so many years, and really the calls. I think it's a soundtrack for all of us, and certainly I know for Penguins fans, you think about all the cups and Doc being on the call for them, and the relationship he has with the greatest stars in the game. It's that respect that they all have for him because of what a brilliant storyteller he is. So I did love, by the way, watching the documentary with the Wings and the Avalanche that ESPN put together, and to hear some of his calls there, certainly some of the Devils games back in the day. Just an eminent storyteller. He's been very gracious and very kind to me, and been able to have some great conversations with Doc over the years. But just to be able to be around him, and whether it's him or Bob Cole at the rink, and for me to be able to work with Bob Costas on the MLB Network side, really just so grateful to have learned from the greats.
Well, Doc is one of my all-time favorites as well.